Hey everyone, my name's Ellis, and for my Mammalian Fair project, I looked at coyote activity patterns, specifically seasonal activity patterns in Chittenden County, Vermont. So the central question to my research project was, how have coyote seasonal activity patterns changed over the last few years in Chittenden County? And just some background on this problem or this question is that coyotes are not native to Vermont, but their range has been expanding eastward over the last 100 years as they fill niches left by extirpated carnivores such as the catamount and Canada lynx. Coyotes are highly adaptable because they are generalists and opportunists when it comes to habitat and feeding strategy. As a result, they do compete with native species such as the gray fox for their prey species, which mostly include small mammals, although they are seen as a problem species because people believe they also compete with us for deer and with hunters and livestock, but this is not usually the case. Usually coyotes don't hunt large livestock or deer unless they're in large groups, and often when they do hunt livestock, they're scavenging livestock. They're not actually hunting. The data that I used for this came from iNaturalist. There were a total of 66 observations from 2014 to 2020, with the most observations made from around 2017 onward. Since I also wanted to consider daily activity patterns, I wanted to have a timestamp of when the coyote was seen, so I didn't consider observations of scat or tracks. And then I took down the date, so the month and year, time of day, and town that the observation was made. And then I did an ANOVA single factor between the groups of like season and year that the observation was made, which you'll see in a graph in the next slide. Okay, here you can see the three different figures I was able to make from the data from iNaturalist. The first on the left is the different towns the data came from. As you can see, South Burlington, Winooski, and Burlington make up where the most observations were made. And then the most observations were made at nighttime and dusk. And then on the lower right-hand side, that graph has sectioned each year up into the seasons. And you can see that the most observations were made in spring and winter, especially in 2019, 2020, with fewer observations made in the summer and fall. So the finding that the most observations occur in spring and winter coincides with coyote dispersal patterns. Juveniles will typically leave from their parents around October, and then again in February, depending on when they were born or the resources available. So this is a time when home ranges and territories are changing, so that could explain some of the increase in observations during this time. Also, it could just be that coyotes are more visible due to decreased vegetation. I also saw, as a result of the ANOVA test, which gave a p-value of 0.24, indicating that there was not a statistical difference between the number of observations made between the seasons in the different years. So that indicates that coyotes have a consistent activity pattern across the BT landscape, but there are some problems with the data. Could you always use some more observations, especially for those earlier years, and there were definitely a concentration of observations in the Burlington area where there's just more people and more people there to document the coyotes. And overall, understanding activity patterns is important for species ecology and especially for identifying hotspots for wildlife conflict, which is really important in the Vermont area with so many farms, and especially for carnivore species that can be villainized because of their ecology. So we want to make sure we keep an eye on that and understand how, when, and where they're using their landscape. These are all the sources that I used for the project, in addition to the iNaturalist data. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.